everybody, and welcome to Roundtable Live for today, April 27th, 2018. I am your de facto host for today anyway, and today we've got Ryan, Nick, and a picture of a really cuddly bear. So that's what we're rolling with for today. How's everybody doing? What's up?
Hello.
Doing all right. What's up?
Hello. How's it
Hello.
going?
Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
Hello.
Hello. What's up today on the docket? We're going to be talking more. We did touch it a little bit last week, but we're going to be talking about more God of War today since all three of us have put some time into it. Me and Nick, I think, are around the same spot, and Ryan has a couple of hours at the very least. We're going to be talking about a couple of games Nick's played, a couple of games I've played, and then Ryan probably played more Slay the Spire all week, so he's got God of War to talk about.
They released a new character yesterday,
Ooh,
but
all right.
I haven't had a chance to play him because I saw Infinity War last night, and that movie is 4 years long.
Is it only 2.5 hours?
4 hours.
It's 2 hours and 45 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, I expected it to be like 3.5, but
Yeah.
I mean 2:45. With how much they have to do in that movie, I can imagine that still is like barely enough.
It moves. It moves fast. Yeah.
And let me tell you about Slay the Spire. I've seen tons of titles for streams, and they all say it's a great character.
New character.
Interesting. Is that what all the streams say? Slay the Spire, new character?
There's only 2 streams on Twitch right now. There's God of War - what difficulty setting you're playing it on, and then Slay the Spire, new character.
Right. I've got mine's God of War hard mode. That's what I say all the time. Got to make sure. Do we actually want to just tackle the biggest topic in the room right now anyway? Tackle the God of War? Talk about that for as long as we can manage, and then we'll move on to some of the smaller stuff?
Seems all right.
All right. Well, I talked about it last time. Nick, I want to hand it off to you as far as introing God of War. So I'm curious your thoughts on it. If you want to give a recap as to what the game is, feel free. Ball's in your court.
All right. Well, I don't know if I need to give a recap. I think we get the idea. It's God of War with a new reimagination. It's a new version of a game like that. I think it's an absolutely fantastic game. I've been nothing but surprised on every turn about how thoughtful attention to detail has been about almost every element of the game. Graphically brilliant, gameplay conventions feel brilliant, soundtrack and production value brilliant, cinematography, everything you can imagine about what is to be like the top level of AAA gaming. You know, pardon me, I'm gushing a little bit, but I think this game is fucking amazing. Like, actually 10 out of 10, possibly.
Yeah.
And I don't say that very often, even if I might be easy to please in some areas. This element, talking about AAA stuff, I'm not easy to please.
Yeah. And don't worry, as far as spoilers are concerned, we're going to be trying to avoid spoilers, basically. Don't worry. Because none of us have finished the game either, so we don't want to be spoiled on it.
Yeah, not even close.
Yeah, Ryan's still first couple hours of the game as it is.
I'll go ahead.
No, please, go ahead.
What's really striking me is that I feel like, Dark Souls came out like 7 years ago, something like that. And I know that like people are, it's almost like a games industry dog whistle. Is like as soon as somebody says, like they make a comparison with another action game to Dark Souls, it's like the person doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I actually feel like in this case, it's a very valid signpost because it feels like the first action game I've played in forever that has obviously clearly taken influence from Dark Souls where, you need to know enemy patterns and watch their animations and stuff like that. And having that same kind of like semi-slow paced combat instead of something like Bayonetta, but has revolutionized it or iterated upon it in a meaningful way. But really, like, I feel like I go into every encounter being like, I need to figure out what strategy I'm going to use here. Like, are there going to be so many ranged enemies that I need to prioritize them with axe throws and then like just kind of kite the other melee enemies around the field? Or it feels like every single encounter is almost like its own strategic and tactical, like a real-time sort of XCOM thing almost, where I feel like I'm using my brain instead of just even in something like DMC, which I think is a great game, a lot of it is like, I'm gonna shoot them up in the air and I'm gonna smash the shit out of them, whereas in this you're really like, even one enemy can kick the Christ out of you if you mess up like 1 or 2 attacks, basically.
And the way combos work in this, or the way you approach combat, is very non-linear. Most of these kind of action games, you generally tend to do like a quick like R1, R2 kind of combo back and forth or square triangle. Yeah. This game, you can go off in a bunch of different directions because you've got like runic attacks, shield attacks, blocks and parries, different degrees of knock-up, pop-up attacks, and maneuverability on top of it. plus other kind of effects that'll come into play when you bring Atreus into the thing with the arrows and effects that happen with the arrows, which I won't spoil.
Right.
Cool stuff comes to be in ways that it actually gives you a very broad field of combat options, which keeps it from feeling stale, because the game is largely driven by combat, plus quite a bit of exploration as well, and a little bit of puzzle solving, but it's pretty minor.
It really, the combat never stops, even on hard, where I'm getting my ass handed to me kind of regularly, but it's like in a good way, because every time you fight him, I go back to the fight, I make it a little further and a little further.
Yeah.
Even that though, like I never walk away from combat not feeling like I'm powerful. I love seeing a crowd of enemies and being able to like throw my axe into the head of one of them where they get frozen, charge in and start punching the Christ out of another one, kill him, call my axe back, whip around and start fighting. It all feels very natural, and it all feels very superhero-like in a lot of ways, which I love.
I don't know if you've experienced this on hard, but like I feel like when I get a boss fight, I'm stoked, because I'm like, yes, one big enemy that you fight like you fight an enemy in Dark Souls, yes, is beautiful. You just stay at the ankles and then roll to the left whenever they swing, right? But when you have situations where like there's 8 basic enemies, and maybe there's like 2 big bads and then 1 projectile firer and 5 basic Draugr or something like that, I'm like, this is hell.
Yep,
this is it's impossible. It's a nightmare. And then like you start to, I've never played another character action game, or at least maybe I've never played them like on this difficulty, where even those basic encounters is not just like combo, you filled your meter, pop the meter, go ape shit on everybody, and then you basically win. Like I was going into these encounters with strategies. Like the first guy that spawns is strong against the axe, so I just like chuck the axe into a wall, beat the shit out of him. That builds enough meter. Have Atreus shoot like the witch type enemy, and then I pop Spartan Rage until they die, cancel Spartan Rage, then like 4 Draugr spawn in, and it's just like, it's really, really good. It's really thoughtful.
It's adrenaline pumping like crazy. And the further you go in the game, like the thing I've been learning more and more is to rely on Atreus more and more, because as you upgrade him, he becomes much more useful. And one of the things I love about this game is that the game acknowledges how more useful he becomes. Because in the beginning of the game, like after a fight, Atreus is just, how'd I do, father? And he's like, focus, do better, blah, blah, blah. At the point I'm in now, when he asks, how am I doing? Curtis will say things like, you've improved, or adequate. A lot of adequate. And you're like, that's really, really cool that while he gets better, he is actively more useful in combat, and little sidelines acknowledge that. And it's a little world building of stuff like that as well, where Nick and I were just in a very similar place, very snowy region. But in that snowy region, as you're wandering and exploring, Atreus is running on the ice and sliding, and he's like playing with the snow, and he just does little things that just give him life, which is really nice.
And Kratos shuts it down usually immediately. Like I was in a cave and he started to like make an echo sound, and he was like, boy.
He'd be like, hello, and he just yells at him, and he's like, it's great.
It's also like really extremely well produced.
Yes.
Which I think I've watched a little bit of you playing it, Nick, and I think you picked up on substantially more than I did. But the way that it's like geniusly designed from a compositional standpoint, where like, of course, everyone's talking about the fact that there's like no camera cuts in the entire game. But I saw a tweet the other day, and it reminded me that I didn't even notice, but I played it for like 3 hours or 4 hours, and I've never experienced a loading screen except for when you boot the game up, because they have doors that take a little while to open, or they have like a little crack that you have to sneak through or something like that, and they're just in the background. Whenever you do that, they're like loading the next area in. So you never get taken out of the actual game itself. Like you're constantly immersed, and it's just really, really smartly designed.
And on top of that, there's great cinematography as well. They managed to line up shots when you don't even expect it. You'll all of a sudden find the lighting is just right, like proper artistically set. As you'll emerge from an area, all of a sudden you'll see, on one side you've got like a bright orange light, and then on the other side you've got a blue light, and it'll always be framed properly for that moment. And wherever you turn the camera, there's something interesting looking going on. They're almost never just dull, dead space.
Yeah. The other, as far as the combat is concerned, or wheel back to that and kind of wrap that conversation up a little bit. The only thing, and it might be because I'm playing on hard, But the only thing I remember I said it to Nick, and I think I said it to you, Ryan, a few days ago. The only thing that's really, it's a minor complaint, all things told, is that, but when there is a lot of enemies on screen, Kratos moves like a tank to the point where there's not a lot of finesse to the way you can move around the battlefield. And sometimes it feels like, to me, I'm taking hits when I could have avoided them if I at least had better vision of what the hell is happening around me, because they surround you so fast. Yeah. And like the little red pings are not enough for me when I'm very focused on the shit that's happening in front of my face.
You know what I think? It's like in Assassin's Creed or Arkham, where like when enemies surround you, I think we've gotten really used to just a button prompt, and then Batman grows an arm out of like in between his shoulder blades and like deflects it.
Like the T-1000.
Exactly, yeah. So it has been like an adjustment period. Crowd control is really, really tough.
Yeah.
At least in the early game. I hear that later Atreus gets some abilities that maybe make it a little easier.
Yeah,
and
he does.
I have runic attacks that help a little bit, but yeah, I've learned super fast, like, well, it's slower than most people would like, but quickly enough that like locking on sucks.
Unless you're doing like a one-on-one boss fight.
Yeah, and then you want to like always be watching the pings, and then like if things get tough, you just roll out of the way, and you know it's not the worst thing in the world to just back off and then throw your axe like 4 times and whittle an enemy down or something like that.
I've done that many times.
To add on to what you just said about him being sort of clunky, I think the way I'm taking that personally is it's more about the way they've got the collision boxes mapped out on the edges of the map. There are sequences or areas where you kind of back into a corner, and because the collision boxes are rather wide and Kratos is rather wide, you can't necessarily navigate around something effectively. And if you get something more like Assassin's Creed or even Dark Souls, the characters tend to step over little bits of debris, and Kratos doesn't. Those are just walls to him. So you have to kind of imagine a topographic map of whatever zone you're in and think of all of the objects and rubble that aren't destructible as solid. And then you can kind of work with that better to establish how you should react in combat. It's a bit of an odd acclimation period, but I mean, it doesn't bug me, but it does a little bit.
Yeah. I've been backed into a corner a couple of times due to that, and have had to like hopefully get it like one of my longer animation attacks off before they hit me to clear some space, because those runic attacks specifically cannot be interrupted once you start them. Every other attack you can roll out of and stop, but those attacks, once you start the animation, you better hope that you're not going to get smacked, because you can't cancel them. Something else very similar to Dark Souls in the way the game at least feels for me is I come across fights that are beyond my level. Like the world itself is built in such a way where the enemies don't scale with you. Areas are higher level than you are, and if you stumble across them, either deal with it or don't and leave and come back another time. And I just had a mini boss fight 2 days ago or so. I think I was talking about it, where everything he did was one shot me, but you could learn his patterns, and I was learning to the point where I finally had a perfect fight against him and I beat him. And you walk away with, loot equal to whatever his level was, and you feel accomplished, and it's just really, really nice. And I like that. I like a world where if I go somewhere that's not supposed to be my level, it'll beat me into the ground, and I either have to adapt or go and do other areas as well. It's really nice.
And since you don't scale to match it or vice versa, it's actually skill-based. Mm-hmm. If you actually are paying enough attention, learn the character's moves enough, you can actually overcome things you should never be able to. That's a really nice feeling in a game.
Sometimes the numbers are a bit too much, and it's less about the enemy and more the fact that you've got like 6 dudes surrounding you that are like 6+.
Yeah.
And that can kill you. But other than that, for the most part, it's the skill-based aspect of combat really shines through.
It's so frustrating to like
purple lords.
I've only put like 2 skill points into I've only bought 2 skills for Kratos, and one of them is the cleave, which has been super useful. Like the hold R2, and it's a really slow but high damage attack you can use on frozen enemies in particular, or bosses with like a big window. But the other one was the like R1, 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 R2 combo. And I swear to God, the number of times you do R1, 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 commit to the R2, and then the enemy just pokes you. You're like,
you tried.
Please.
There's some really cool combos that open up later where you have the ability to hit R1 once, then pause, and he like changes stance, and then you can continue a combo, and it's like it changes the stance to like a distance combo more or less that is more crowd control-y, which is nice. The other thing I realized with this, and I've played all the God of Wars except for one of the PSP ones prior, I've never in a God of War game been this interested in the lore and the story of what is going on.
Same. Yep.
Every God of War game prior is, I'm going to murder everything, get out of my way, and I'm going to rip your head off, I'm going to rip your guts out, or whatever it is. But there's no, outside of vengeance, the context stays the same for fucking 6 games or whatever it is. The reason he's doing it.
Insofar as this God of War is an evolution in terms of visual production, it's also an evolution for the character of Kratos.
Yeah.
In the same amount of depth.
It reminds me in a way of so in the old God of War, he's just testosterone filled rage machine. He's always giving it his all the time. He's screaming, he's ripping things apart always. What I love about this Kratos, it's like coming across like the Hulk or Bruce Banner when he's like 70 or 80 years old and he hasn't been the Hulk in forever, and he doesn't want to be the Hulk anymore, but you poke him enough to the point where he basically is like, all right, you made me do this. And that first boss fight like really hammers that home, that opening boss fight of the game where he keeps like saying, go away, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, and then he just pushes him to the point where you get to see the Kratos from those games come out again, and it's really fucking epic when it happens.
Did you pick up on the little bit of how it's mirrored with that situation, and then that he does the little sparring match with the boy? The two things are actually kind of interconnected.
In what way?
He pushes him to his breaking point when the other guy just did that too.
Oh, yeah. When he just basically pokes at Atreus until
it's just kind of the cycle of the two things is kind of cool.
Yeah. But I'm sitting here, 10 hours in, and there's still so many questions. I'm just like, I'm so curious as to what's going on. And I can piece together certain things, and just because I have a little bit of knowledge of Norse mythology, as well as just, piecing together little hints of like Atreus and stuff. But I love it. I love that there's depth, and I want to see what's going to happen beyond the next cool boss fight.
Yeah, Kratos is just interesting to listen to. The way that he juxtaposes against the boy who's obviously taken a lot of his mother's attitudes. The two of them together make for a really strange and interesting combination at times. And they actually complement each other more than you would expect. But that's kind of what you grow to learn as the characters materialize a little bit. And they do grow quite a bit in the game.
Yeah. The one aspect of the game I kind of still don't like is the leveling loot aspects. Maybe it just hasn't clicked for me, but it just feels almost kind of tacked on. Like, obviously, as you equip more gear and you level up, you are stronger and can handle other enemies, but it almost feels more necessary than it has to be, and it still feels kind of out of my grasp a bit. Like, it doesn't feel like it's something I fully understand.
It's a lot of it, I think, is the UI is kind of bad for it.
The inventory in UI in general is kind of a fucking mess.
It's overly cluttered and a little overcomplicated, and I mean, it's all functional. It's not like it's actually literally bad, but it's just overly complicated for what it needs to be.
And there's too many resources. There's too many different resources that you collect.
Right? That must happen later, because right now I'm like, all I see is hack silver and then like Strithian silver or whatever it's called.
You got hack silver, the Strithian stuff, then you've got the frozen tiers and the stuff that upgrades the axe, and the stuff that you need to upgrade some of the other talismans, whether you pull through
frozen fire for the
frozen fire for like the bigger upgrades. There's just so many different things you need to fucking collect in this game. It kind of frustrates me to the point where I'm just like, I don't want to deal with it. And whenever I see one of those dwarves, I'm just like, God damn it, I don't want to mess with the gear right now.
I don't really mind so much the collecting. It's really that I don't have an easy way of understanding if I'm able to make an easy upgrade to something better at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the trade-offs are always going to be, or if they're actually better, even though I see obviously the number is green.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't want to spend money because the thing you have is actually in a way better. And also the other thing is you have gem sockets, and those don't automatically move to the new stuff. You have to manually, I think, unequip them.
You have to manually pop them.
So you can forget that you had a gem, unequip the item, buy a new item, equip it, and then lost your gem because it's in the other item that's unequipped. So I don't know. There should be some more modular way of handling that, or it should just move them over automatically.
Just little quality of life stuff I would like to see.
It's a little awkward. Compared to the polish of everything else, it seems a little bit awkward.
Yeah, agreed. Other than that, I don't know really what else there is to say, other than the game just feels like it really does feel like a masterpiece. It really feels like a modern masterpiece that I hope we see a lot more of in the future.
The other gripe I wanted to mention is that it's a little bit inconsistent, some of the player cues about what you're meant to do with prompts. Sometimes a jump prompt, you have to look up, down, left, or right, and you won't always realize there's a jump prompt or you don't know where you're meant to go. In other cases, you're meant to pick up Atreus and throw him up somewhere, but you don't realize that that's the only place he can be thrown. So you'll think you've solved a puzzle because it just intuitively makes sense, but then you have to find the place that he belongs to be thrown to. And it's just another sort of awkward spot when, like, there's many ledges the boy could easily climb to. Just why is that the only one that's accessible? Well, it's because it's a gameplay convention.
Yeah.
So those minor things, they're like the tiniest little dings, but they take you a little bit out of the immersion, which is very seamless other than that.
Yep. I agree. Like, all the things that we're saying as far as complaints are concerned are very minor in the grand scheme of what otherwise is a game that I literally just want to play to the point where I want to put my work off and just go play more God of War.
It really does have that, maybe like 2 or 3 times a generation sort of feel. Yeah. Where when you're playing it, you're like, this game is like an instant classic.
Yeah.
It's not something people are going to sleep on and then like 5 years down the road, they're going to be like, oh, that was actually good. We're like in the zeitgeist right as it's come out, which is neat.
It's kind of hypnotizing, honestly. Like the you don't know where you're going to end up. The whole thing seems so fantastical and actually epic in the real meaning of that word. That I just want to know what's happening next. And there's just visually such spectacular stuff happening. I really think this is the prettiest piece of software I've ever played.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything better.
It's a really, really great looking game.
Beyond Crisis, like when we used to hold that up as the big deal. This is the big deal.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a point where I was like, oh, that texture looks off. But even up close, like, everything looks fucking incredible.
Yeah. I was also nitpicking, and there's not much I could come up with.
Are you guys playing on the PS4 or PS4 Pro?
Regular.
Same.
I'm on Pro, but I'm like, I have it on prioritized resolution, but that would not be my number one choice. But I'm you know me, like, well, laziness is one word. I respect inertia. That would be how I describe it. And I haven't noticed like frame rate dips to the extent that it's like affected quality of life or anything like that. But,
I mean, yeah, it runs at a locked 30 on resolution mode, or just on the base PS4. It's run fine for me. I'm base PS4ing it. I hear that the performance mode on the PS4 Pro is a jump between 30 and 50 and wherever it can land, and it'll just fluctuate wildly unless you have a monitor. I don't even think the PS4 Pro supports anything above 60 hertz, so I feel like you would notice it, like that jump constantly would feel like a stutter, and I would prefer a smooth 30 personally. Though obviously if I had the opportunity, 60, please. I can imagine this game would look great in the 60 FPS. But even at 30, it runs and plays really well.
Did you turn off motion blur by chance? Just because that actually... Sorry,
so.
what?
I said I must have. At least I hope so.
Well, they actually cleverly use it to disguise a little bit of frame rate choppiness at times, because it sort of acts like an interpolation between one frame and the other. So I was in a cave and I was looking at these little spots and I was like, oh, you can kind of see the specular highlights of the spots drag when you move the camera around. So I turned it off, and then I noticed it's a lot more juddery than it actually appears because of the motion blur. So it plays fine. I'm not really complaining. I wish it was, locked at 60, of course, but for what it's worth, they made the best use of the hardware and resources that they could. And I think they're all operating. The developers are just on the highest level of mastery that I've seen in any gameplay of any game I can think of. Really great decisions, smart decision making. It's great. It's just a great game. I want to buy a 4K TV to play this game, honestly.
I can't imagine. I can imagine how fucking good it would look on a 4K TV on the Pro.
It makes me want to stream more. That happens like once a year. That I play a game where I'm like, I want to do like I was thinking maybe tomorrow I'll just stream for like 8 hours. I'll just do like an 8-hour God of War.
I literally did that twice.
Yeah.
I kept being like, oh, I'll just keep playing. Why stop?
Yeah. That's how I feel. I keep wanting to stream more, which is nice because YouTube has been kind of a mess on my end lately as far as not to get into that really, but it's been a nice excuse to worry less about the YouTube stuff and make up for it by streaming more often. And I went out of my way to buy a Razer Ripsaw to stream this thing. So now that I have my PS4 hooked up, I'm going to be like, well, now what other PS4 games have I picked up but not played, and gives me another excuse to stream.
This is tangential, but on Tuesday's stream, I did the Detroit
I won't touch it. I'm
going
to play the game fresh.
I watched that, yeah.
That's you can play it sight unseen. It's cagey. Like there's some stuff where you're like
cagey, that's great.
It's done it looks like it's treading ground that's been done many, many times before.
What does it mean to be human?
Well, like you're an android and it's an allegory for racism.
Yeah,
and
of
it's
course.
kind of like heavy-handed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
We don't like your kind.
Yeah.
You're like, well, okay, I get
wow,
it.
real
But
subtle.
at the same time, it was kind of cool. It had a little bit of like the puzzle solving stuff was a little bit like those 4 really cool segments in Remember Me, where you I don't know if any of you played that. This is like ancient history now.
Remember Me, I remember being excited for it, and then it came out and people were like, so I never touched it.
The character action part was like 5 out of 10, and then the what was the I don't even know what you describe it as. There's like weird memory
like point click adventure kind of
puzzle. It's like it is kind of like a hidden object sort of thing where you'd like find an element and then like move it through time. But there were only 4 of them, and that kind of sucked real bad. So like the investigating part of Detroit seems to be a lot like that, where it's very easy. You mostly like are scrubbing through a timeline, and then you see things that you can interact with, and you like reconstruct the events as they happen. But it's more engaging than any of Beyond Two Souls, and probably than Heavy Rain. Like, there's some gameplay.
Did you beat Beyond?
I did beat Beyond.
Can we take a moment to discuss Beyond Two Souls?
I can talk about Beyond for like 60 seconds if you want.
I would love to, because that game is fucking awful.
Well, I think I won't spoil anything in particular, but I think Beyond is like the kind of game, and I said it on my stream, that to me feels like Heavy Rain came out and they got like 90% from everywhere. And then they went, well, I've had this script in my drawer for like 15 years. That's like my dream game.
And Ellen Page was willing to work with us, and so is Willem Dafoe.
Ellen Page, Willem Dafoe. And they're like, nobody can say no to us now, because we crushed it. So we're going to do something here. And it's incomprehensible. The game
it follows the David Cage formula of, as Jesse put it, interesting mystery, bizarre plot, and then demons.
Yes. Very fair.
Indigo Prophecy is the same way.
There is the thing I will say is that in terms of presentation and story, it's not coherent, but it is better presented than Heavy Rain in my opinion. But the gameplay sections are horrendous. Like they are and someone tweeted me and they were like, when Beyond came out, there was like an app companion you could get, and then someone on your phone could play as Aiden, who is like your spirit that has to interact with things, and it ruined the game for them beyond belief. And I was like, I can understand why, but every bit of combat in Beyond Two Souls is either a quick time event, which I'm actually okay with, or there's a blue dot on the screen. You move your cursor over to the blue dot and then go like that with the analog stick.
Because you're the spirit thing. There'll
be like intense moments where they're like, Aiden, help me. And then like 100 ghosts swarm in, and you're just like it's 0% engaging. There's no tension. You're never like, unless I die, I can't fail this part. So, but I will say it's free this month on PS Plus, continuing the strange trend of whatever I've just completed on a Sunday stream becoming free on PS Plus. But yeah, I mean, I honestly don't think it's worth playing, even though that's very disrespectful to a game that, I mean, technically, like, I made money on. So, but I mean, for free.
They paid for your Mystery Science Theater like commentary.
Perhaps, yeah. That's when people were watching the Detroit demo and they're like, "Is this sponsored?" I'm like, "You think they would? If they had watched any of Beyond or Heavy Rain, they would not sponsor it, for sure."
You know, I watched Sino play it all after you did, and he did every ending on it. And I was thinking, you know, probably the thing that would make me interested in this, and I actually might do it now, is to do a one-shot playthrough where you don't try to correct any mistakes. You just go with whatever happens, and then just see how your paths diverge between different people. And whether that's subtle or not, I'm kind of curious to know. But it seems like one of those games that's really good for streaming and good for, like, by design, deciding what you want to do at the moment and then enjoying the results.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a choose your own adventure movie, really.
It's like it's more like I wish I had played it at launch and we could have had like a show where we talked about it for like an hour, but things in this, a lot of it makes no fucking sense to me to use
I meant Detroit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But, like, okay, and now
But it applies a little bit to both.
I can't stop now because I'm on my
Yeah,
soapbox, but I really don't understand. If you haven't played Beyond or you didn't watch it, it is a story with a start, a middle, and an end. But it's told out of order. And at first you're like, oh, cool, like I'm jumping back between them. The more you play, the more you're like, I wish they just told it front to back. So it had, I keep saying the same word over and over again, but like some coherence would be really, really nice. But instead you're like, oh, she had this thing happen to her when she's 17 and then now she's 8 again and she's at a birthday party and she's mad and now she's 50 in a hospital or something. And that, I mean, that one's just made up. But you go back and forth over and over and it's just like, don't do that. Just
I think they think it's buying them credibility in the cinematography department to have a more complex design for how it's laid out.
Yeah.
But it might not be necessary, I guess.
But I agree with what you said. I think Detroit actually seems cool. It's only a demo and, you know, anything could happen. But it seems like your choices actually make much more of a difference, at least within each individual chapter or the one chapter that we saw. It seems like they have more commitment to being like, well, you screwed it up and now you lose, right? Whereas in Heavy Rain, you know, there's scenes where, somebody's holding up a convenience store and you're trying to sneak up on them. You fail a QTE, you knock over a glass bottle, and then you still manage to get over to him and disarm him. So, yeah.
Do we know anything about the structure of the game? Is it just a bunch of nodes of those chapters strung together? Or is it like other gameplay between the investigation?
I'll tell you straight up, narratively, I can already tell you what's going to happen. Is that this dude is going to... Well, the cop is going to be a tool of the establishment, and then he's gradually going to, you know, the discontent is going to be stored and was stoked within him, and he's going to be like, maybe robots should be the master, and he can go rogue and support an android uprising, or he can toe the company line to some extent. But
I hope it's not a binary decision at the end, like it always is.
what I'm worried about it is that it might be a unary decision. It might be like
even worse.
You're going to be forced to you're going to be forced to join the android uprising, and then you can just either be begrudging or you can be like all in. But that's a lot of conjecture for a game that's not out yet. But you know, I kind of feel like I've warged into David's brain because I've played so much David Cage recently, and I'm like,
it's not hard.
I saw where he was going, and I saw a bunch of humans being like, you know, we don't like you because you're a robot. And then when you like complete the demo, your dude goes like, you know, software errors accumulated or something like that. And I'm like, I see where you're going, David.
Well, there was speculation that I saw Sinnoh making that maybe as you accumulate those software errors, you might actually unlock abilities that way. And there's sort of ways to go off the beaten path and let the character develop in a way that isn't pre-programmed, so to speak, to follow their narrative. So I'm still curious about it. I was more curious after watching the demo than before because I'd kind of written him off in general, and this kind of brought me in a little bit.
I thought the demo was cool.
Very short, but cool, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's one of those... It reminded me of demos from like, you know, 15 years ago, where it's like an E3 demo where you play it and you're like, I want to believe. Now they might have taken the best part of it.
The perfect vertical slice.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I was asking about, what you think will be between those segments of those decision-making moments.
Yeah. Well, I imagine it'll be a lot of walking around really clunkily.
Right.
And then
the usual.
You should talking to you.
Absolutely play, if you get the chance, Indigo Prophecy.
Yeah.
It's only like 6 to 8 hours long. I've beaten it like 3 times. It's like, I really like when it came out and I played it, I adored that game so much, even though the last 10 minutes are David Cage schlock. But it's a really weird, looking back on it, it's equally weird to something like Beyond Two Souls, but with better storytelling, if that makes it's more coherency, which is what Beyond Two Souls lacks. You should definitely play Indigo Prophecy because it's bananas. It's fucking crazy. So
like, I feel like Heavy Rain kind of ruined them, even though I've only played 2 of their games.
In what way?
I don't know. I'm just getting like a George Lucas kind of vibe where, like, you know, there's no one on Beyond. It just really feels like nobody was there to say no to the plot.
George
like,
Lucas effect.
And then, you know, she uses her warging powers to like, this is such a minor spoiler, but she uses her warging powers to let the dude speak to his dead wife, and people are like, David, this is ridiculous. Like, somebody
Dude,
Sony's never gonna go for this, but after Heavy Rain, I'm pretty sure Sony was like, signing the checks, you're good to go.
Dude, then you need to play Indigo Prophecy. At one point, you play basically a walking corpse, like just with superpowers. You need to play that game.
How did we talk this long about David Cage games?
Because we went from Detroit to just like,
I know, but
everything David Cage.
Same amount of time as God of War.
I feel like for Detroit, I'm trying to think of a good movie analogy. I think it's kind of like the Star Wars prequels, where like after watching
for Detroit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like after watching Star Wars Episode 2, I was like, I don't really care what happens in Star Wars Episode 3. But then, like, as we got closer to release and I saw some marketing, I was like, you know what? I'm in. I'm invested in the Cage verse now, and you've got another chance, and it looks interesting so far. So
I want him to bring all of his games under one universe. I want to know how he would do that.
All the remaining protagonists, it's like freaking Smash Brothers for David Cage games.
The David Cage cinematic universe.
Chad has a good analogy that, like, he's like M. Night Shyamalan, where like when it's bad, it's easily made fun of. But there's always like, he's always trying something, and most of the time you end up laughing at it. But some of the time, at least especially before it comes out, you're like, maybe.
That's even a more apt. So. That's a really apt comparison, because when Shyamalan has a low budget to work with, he has to get creative with the storytelling in his movies. But once they signed those checks, it just got out of control.
With The Village, like a day before The Village came out, everyone's like, "Oh, I can't wait to see what the mystery is." Like 2 days after The Village came out, people were like, "I hate this guy."
Is this a lady in the water or a Sixth Sense? It's usually a lady in the water.
Well, that's God of War / David Cage for everybody there. Ryan, have you played the new character in Slay the Spire?
I played for like one floor. So I'll give you, because I know like Nick doesn't need to hear about Slay the Spire yet again, even though it's the greatest game.
I'm ready to jump in, honestly. I need to jump in.
So the new character seems to have a very high skill floor from what I played and the little I've watched. The other two characters are just like, you get cards, the cards do damage, or they block, or they apply a status to you or the enemy, basically. Like in any TCG. The new character has like passive, they look like Invoker. They have like orbs around them, and the orbs do something passive every single turn, but they also have the ability to be evoked, and when you evoke them, they do something active. So it's like really, I don't know, it seems confusing to me so far, because it's such a departure from the way that you play as other characters. And the character seems a lot slower, because instead of paying 1 energy to deal 6 damage, you might pay 1 energy to deal like 3 extra damage passively per turn to a target you can't choose, if that makes sense. Yeah, so you're kind of like, and again, I might think I'm an idiot in like a week when I come back and listen to this, but it really seems like, at least on the early floors, you put up block and then passives, and then just like slowly accrue advantages behind the scenes. And then the loop sort of seems like you choose when to pop. Like you store up energy for like 1 big turn, and then you use it and hope to kill them. And if you don't kill them, maybe you're exposed. But
do people seem to like the new character?
They seem interested. I don't know if people are really invested in it, because the game is so good, but it could use some variety. Like runs are very, very similar. Well, not similar, but there's only like 15 kinds of runs you can have, basically. So to have another character in there, and it's not just another character, it's another set of cards for that character, which then can be introduced in like challenge runs for other classes, and then the relics that character has that can also be used. Like,
so a new character comes with a bunch of things.
Yeah. Okay. Like there's ripples that come out of it from a design standpoint, and people generally trust Megacrit, the developers, to design in a really curated way. Where
have they done anything other than Slay the Spire?
No, I think they worked in the industry before, but there was an article that came out in maybe February. They'd prototyped Slay the Spire maybe 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
So they've played it like they've been making it for a long time. This isn't just something they whipped up in like 3 months. Like,
yeah, this kind of came out, from my perspective, the game kind of came out of nowhere and dominated for a lot of people who enjoy that style of game of roguelike plus, you know, TCG or CCG rather.
Yeah. So like after this, I'll probably play as the character some more. But
cool.
Like honestly, I'll keep saying it like week to week. The dailies in Slay the Spire are like the best dailies in any game. And it's the easiest content I make on a weekly basis. Like it's the 7 easiest videos because I'm like, these are all really, really fun and different from one another. And the dirty secret is that they tend to be easy. So, you know, for the most part, you're not getting your ass kicked.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to hear the new character is at least interesting. I think I'm ready to like buy in and play the game. I was off on it a little bit, but the more I watch people play it, the more satisfying it looks to play when you start like understanding it. So I'm excited to jump in. Nick, you played 0 Degrees North, 0 Degrees West, right?
I did do that thing, yes.
What is that about?
It's a Nick game.
Okay.
I happened to notice Brian.
I noticed.
Brian popped in my chat for a minute, and I almost wanted to apologize to him because I don't even know why, other than just like it's the most Nick game. Really.
Well, in the back of my head, I was like, I watched you play for like 5 minutes, and I was like, he's only gonna play this for like another 5 minutes after
this. Played it for 2 hours.
Played it for 2 hours. All you do is walk. I'll give you my interpretation of the game. You walk through doors, and then there's like an environment that's like, oh, psychedelic colors, and then you walk through a door, and it's like, this room's dark and there's a table in it, and then you walk through a door and it's like, oh, it's snowing now. So like I'm not like denigrating you, but that was my perception of the game after 5 minutes. It's like, oh, I would never on my earth would I, or never in my life would I play this.
Never in your earth. I agree. It's very much that. Yeah, it's really good to talk over during a stream actually, because it's just very flow of consciousness, just walk and jump around. But the structure of the game it's mostly just sort of this tranquil, abstract walking sim where all you do is just look for doors and experience environments and crazy psychedelic colors. The game doesn't pretend or try to be a proper game. It has no win condition or end state. You just look through these environments. It's a bit like LSD Dream Emulator, but not related to anything to do with Japan. So it's just a whole bunch of like neon colored cityscapes and weird flashing strobing stuff underwater. Sometimes there'll be lines of doors like in the Matrix, just strange visuals interrupted by other strange visuals, and actually a very good ambient soundtrack that goes with it as well. So it really puts you in this headspace of like you're in this very odd spacey environment that seems to go on pretty much forever. And like I said, it just keeps flowing. So wherever you end up walking, there's either an end to that environment or a door that takes you to a different one. And they're all interconnected in about a dozen ways. So you'll just wander aimlessly throughout all of these different places.
Kind of sounds like, did you say Proteus? I feel like you did, but
I didn't, but that was one of the things in mind. It is similarly endlessly walkable. Yeah. So yeah, it's not a game for people looking for a game to play, but it's more of an artistic visual experience with a very nice soundtrack.
Yeah, I mean, for like a couple weeks, I was doing that with Proteus. Like, I'd come home from work and I'd boot up Proteus for like 15 minutes, and it was like a cool, chill, zen out kind of game.
Were you wearing your Duber shirt at the time? just curious.
Duber was not around at the time. Duber.
I just, you know, I mean, we've been down this road before.
The Duber road?
I'm not patronizing it, and I'm not jealous. I'm holding both hands out in front of me. I just exist in the space in between where I derive no pleasure or value from it whatsoever. Where I'm like, when I play a game like that, I walk around for like 10 minutes and then I get bored and I just go, all right.
Well, you're much more of a mechanics kind of guy in general anyway. I mean, do you really care, like, just as a connection, do you really care that much about the God of War story?
I mean, I think like the story, I don't care. When I think about what I like about God of War is the combat mechanics, like 100%. Right. And then like the puzzle design I think is cool as well. But then I like the story, I'm like, well, I mean, let's put it this way.
Take it or leave it. You don't care.
When there's a moment pretty early on where Atreus is very forlorn and is like despondent. And I was just
jokes over it.
Yeah, my dude was just walking real slow to this switch that I needed him to hit. So I just kept throwing my axe at him. He's like, I'm really sad.
You're like, go.
It's not that I'm not like experiencing the emotion. It's like I get it, but at the same time, like I want to climb that chain. So
Atreus had a solid reason for being sad at the moment.
That's the point is, like, that's kind of the player you just always have been. You care way less about the story and much more about the mechanics.
Most of the time, yeah. But like these games don't even have stories.
This game doesn't even really have any mechanics other than walk. There is the vaguest sense of a story in that apparently in the Steam page, I don't even know if it's in the game. It shows the character pulling up into a gas station, and that's one of the locations that's in the game. And I believe there's like 20 different iterations of that town in more and more increasingly abstract versions. So there might be, it's more like an artistic adaptation of what you think the story is going to be rather than it's told to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, people say I don't have emotions. That's not true. I think I'm just like, with video games, it's real hard. Like, you got to break through a certain layer of cynicism first.
Have you ever, has a game ever done that for you?
Well, when I was like 12, but also like
before the
more recently, like I thought Undertale did a good job, and people thought like I was unaffected by the ending of Undertale. I wasn't. I was just like not crying. But it's not like if I had cried, I wouldn't have been like embarrassed about it. You're talking about the same guy. I teared up like twice during Infinity War. Like I'm aware of the fact that. Like I'm a softie. It's just a different kind of like movies will get me in anything. If like somebody pets a dog in the wrong direction, like against the grain of their fur in a movie, I'm like, you monster. But then like if in a video game, like it's just so many video games started and it's like a monster comes and like chops your wife's head off, and then like an hour later your main character's like, I'm sad about it, and you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. There's very few tools in the toolkit of how to elicit empathy in a player, and I think they often get used too much to the point where we become numb to them. And I think as sort of a polar opposite of you, Ryan, I tend to be overly empathetic in ways that maybe it doesn't even deserve. So it may further juxtapose that for the audience that it seems like you're less emotion or have less emotion than should, but I think it's more that I'm the other direction.
Yeah, I think we're both on opposite sides of normal for sure.
Well, I'm in the middle then. That works for me.
Like I wouldn't recommend 0 Degrees North, 0 Degrees West to a lot of people, but for the people that like that type of thing, they'll really like this because it's got a lot to it if you want that. But you might not want that. You got it?
I got it.
Okay.
All right. Well, I will move on to the game I've been playing a little bit recently that apparently you shit on my clickbait title, Ryan.
Terraria meets Diablo 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
the thumbnail, right?
Yeah, of course. You got to get the people to click on it. You got to play that YouTube game.
That game.
So It Lurks Below is actually created solely by the lead creative developer of Diablo 1 and 2.
Okay.
And he is making his own game. He's been working on it for a couple of years called It Lurks Below, and it is exactly as I describe. It is Diablo 2 meets Terraria, wherein that the building aspect of Terraria is of It Lurks Below is way less important. You can build your own house, but when it comes to NPCs, there are blueprints you find. You just kind of put the blueprint down, and the house and the NPC shows up. They're there. You don't have to worry about it, and they do their own thing. The gameplay is more about classes and leveling and skills and bosses in the world that kind of have that repetitive better loot grind that is in Diablo 1 and 2, where the loot that drops is random in a way that makes sense, where I feel like in Terraria, while the loot was somewhat random, it wasn't in a, I don't want to say structured way like Diablo 1 and 2, but it didn't have that grindy feel like you want to go and get more and get more and get more. So the game is very heavily leaning on dungeon running, that are dungeons in the world, and making gear, but also the finding the better loot, where the building aspects are kind of left behind a little bit. It is still early access, it is still beta, and there's a lot of placeholder art, but it's fun. I'm enjoying it a lot. But if you don't like that Terraria Starbound-esque kind of gameplay loop, I don't know if this is going to be enough to change it. I mean, the fact that there's 6 classes and they all have talent trees and you level up as you kill more things is really cool, and it adds a little bit more of a uniqueness and flair to that style of game. But it's still very similar in that you've got this big world, you can dig into it, you're looking for dungeons, you're looking for bosses, you're looking for better spells and better loot and the like. It's enjoyable. Did you like Terraria, Ryan?
Yeah.
From way back when it came out, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I might still like it. I haven't played it in forever, but I really liked it when it was like,
there's
like 6 years ago.
As of right now, the sucky part for me, outside of the fact that there's still placeholder art, there's no multiplayer and there's no plans for multiplayer.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks because I like playing Terraria and Starbound with friends. But what's there is very promising, and it's a very promising foundation, and I hope it does really well. I think even when I was looking, it has positive reviews on Steam, which is kind of rare for a game like this when it comes out. It's dope, though. I like it a lot. I would suggest you check it out. What was that?
Actually, Nick should start.
Okay.
Oh, you said it's a beta game?
It's early access beta, $20.
Do they have a timeline?
I don't know if he has a timeline. But
I ask because for this type of game, that's very important because they often get really sidetracked and then like never finish.
Yeah, it's only one guy. I know that there's no other developers other than the one, and I don't know if he has a visible timeline right now. But
they canceled Terraria Overworld, which was very sad.
Yeah. Well, that's It Lurks Below. Check it out if you're interested. Ryan,
I played Frostpunk.
Yeah, what is your thoughts?
Have you played Frostpunk?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a little series going on it
Okay,
right now.
I thought so. Because, I don't want to be the authority on this because I'm not.
Okay.
But I like Frostpunk. Frostpunk is a Spanish style. It's not a city builder, but like an ant farm sim, which is like, what's the word that people are using for those now? Like the Rim World. I really like the idea of Colony Simulator is really good. Yeah. Because it's like you don't actually control the individuals, but you kind of control the macro view of what happens. But I think Frostpunk, I was in the middle of describing what it is to begin with. You're in like this steampunky Victorian England colony. Ship has crashed and you're in the middle of this crater, and it's freezing, really, really cold. So you got this generator and then some resources you scattered around and are scattered around the generator. The generator provides heat and you try to build your colony and then eventually go rescue other survivors. And, you get a cool, almost like RimWorld style, resource management combined with the social, political, you pass laws as things happen in the colony to help you out. Right off the bat, people get sick. And then you're like, well, should we allow amputations or should we treat people at all costs? And they're all going to come with positives and negatives that change parameters within your colony. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I will say it suffers from one thing, and I'm interested to hear if you agree. I think in every colony simulator, what I like to do is play for an hour, figure out what I did wrong, terribly wrong, and then go start a colony over again, do a little bit better, play for an hour and a half, learn from my mistakes, start again, and eventually get to the point where I feel like I'm making some pseudo-optimal decisions. And what's a drag for me is the fact that events happen in the same order every single time.
Yes. There are 3 separate scenarios that you can play. And the first one, A New Home, the one that was available first, I haven't played the other 2 scenarios, and I assume it's similar. Yeah, they're all dedicated. Here's what this is going to happen here, and this is going to happen here. The temperature drops and the temperature rising is all scripted as well. I agree. Yeah. I wish it was more random, or at least there was a quote unquote sandbox mode I could play, because while there are events that do show up, I do have that first hour to 2 hours down pretty pat where I can blast through. Yeah, you can blast through a lot of it and you can optimize really well. There's still things I'm learning. There are certain events where you go out and look for survivors that, while the same event is going to happen when you find them, you can do that at your leisure at least, and you can time that when you want. But there are things that will just show up.
Weather is randomized, I think, to some extent as well.
Is it? I've always seen it drop 2, raise 1, drop 1, raise 1, drop 1, drop 1.
It must be it must be seeded, I should say.
And so is the resources are all seeded as well.
Yeah. But it's going to sound like I might be making this up to make myself look smarter than I am. But after playing it for particularly what got me was the way the UI pops up to tell you of an event and the transitions between those kind of scenes. I was like, is this from this War of Mine devs? And then I checked and I was like, it is. And
it is equally depressing, basically, as this.
I felt
War
like a damn genius, though. And I was like, those games are different enough, but the way that they give you events, and no matter what you do, it's and as soon as you click this, people are sad. Yes. And the other one is people are sad. And you're like, okay, well.
There's always I have not once in the game really, maybe except for the first 30 minutes because I have like the opening down, where I feel like I'm not struggling in some way, where there's something on the verge of collapse at all times, and you can only really choose, one thing or the other, and if you choose this one thing, whether it be a law to pass or a specific building that you want to build, it means you will not have the resources to build this other building that people really want. And then other things is like when people die, you have to make a decision. Do you want cemeteries where people will not work for like a day because they're going to go mourn their loved one, but people will be happier to have a cemetery? Or do you have a snow pile where people are going to be miserable that they're not burying their people, but those bodies will be more useful at some point in the future?
Oh no, cannibalism.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming is going to happen. Is like you eventually go down the cannibalism tree in laws and things get really, really desperate.
It'll be much sadder after they eat their loved ones.
But they'll have full bellies and they'll never know. Just don't tell them.
So yeah, I think it's like it's not necessarily fair to the game, but like in the context of it being a really, really strong month for games, it strikes me as something a little weak for me to do a series on it or play like 20 hours. But it's like the perfect game if you're like, I don't know what to play for like 3 streams, or like I want to do like a relatively short video series or something like that. It seems cool. Like I've had a decent time playing it. And if I'm willing to be controversial, I think I would rather play Frostpunk than play Mech Lords ever again.
Battletech. Okay.
Battletech.
Why did you hate Battletech so much? I'm curious.
I don't think that I want to draw a very clear distinction between me not liking Battletech and me thinking that Battletech is a bad game. Okay. Because I don't think it's a bad game.
It's not your game.
Exactly. And I've seen so many people whose opinions I respect in the strategy genre being like, I love Battletech. I'm addicted to Battletech. Like, I can't believe I'm thinking of playing anything else. When I finish Battletech, I'm going to play Battletech again. While I was playing the first couple of missions of Battletech, I was like, I am bored to sin.
The first couple of missions are the slowest thing in the world, though. I will say, here's what I'll say. The opening 2 hours of that game, when the game is restricting you very, very heavily, you have a couple of contracts, you can operate within like 3-star systems, and you're forced down a few tutorial missions in the very beginning anyway. They're boring, it's not engaging, the story kind of is dragging. But once it opens up, in my opinion, when you have the star map open, and you can take contracts from any government, and you have a better ship and stuff, that's where the game really gets exciting for me. The combat, however, never gets faster, if that's your biggest complaint. And I can understand that. I wish there was an options where it could be like speed up animations.
Yeah.
Because
it feels like it feels kind of old school to me. And I think that's where I deviate, is that like I really, when it comes to tactics games, I cut my teeth on 2012's XCOM and like XCOM 2. So I was really like, I thought that Battletech was going to be more similar in the vein where you have like a layer of management outside of the actual tactics layer, and then every mission is like, hey, there's like enemy mechs, kill them, or like complete the objective. When what I realize is what it actually is, and there might be some missions like that, but it's almost like an old real-time strategy game campaign where every mission is like, you have like little set pieces that you go into throughout the mission. Like in the first mission, it's like, hey, like investigate this, and then here's 1 guy or 2 guys, and then you blow them up, and then you move a little further, and it's like, here's 4 guys, and then there's a little dialogue that happens between them, and then like some little minions come out, and then the mission's over.
Yeah, this is why I said get through the first couple of hours, because what ends up happening is the little ship you're on gets replaced with a modular ship that you get to upgrade XCOM style.
Okay.
That gets better things and cooler things. And then there's always a story mission that you can take, which will have a difficulty, and then optional contracts underneath that you can just take that'll pay differently. And those optional contracts are the ones that are like, go here, kill this person. Go here, kill this lance of mechs. Go here and escort these people. And through the mission, you start thinking more strategically, in that when you take a contract, you get to negotiate. And you negotiate how much money you're going to get versus how much salvage you're going to get. And salvage at the end of a mission is, all right, well, I murdered all of these mechs. Here's the salvage that was left over from the parts that I didn't destroy. I negotiated for 2 pieces of salvage of my choice plus 5 random pieces of salvage. Here's what I'm going to do. Or you could be like, well, my negotiation was minimal money. I'm walking with maybe 10 grand, but I get 5 pieces of salvage of my choice plus 10 random pieces of salvage after this combat. So you look at the contract, like, all right, well, I know there's going to be a lance of mechs. You engage the mechs, and you're like, all right, that mech has this, this, and this. I'm just going to go for his legs, take out his legs, and leave the rest of the mech intact. And then I know I'll have that mech to pick and choose from.
And now you BattleTeched me.
Okay, but that's
which is fine. But like when you're like, hey, it really, if you tough it through the first 2 hours, it really opens up, and you get some more of those missions that are like XCOM style. I was like, sick. And then you're like, and then you look at the species of mech, and you go, oh, they've got a weak chassis in the Southwest Quadrant or something. So like, I'm pretty confident that game is
it's too much to manage.
It's too much for me. Yeah.
No, that's fair. That's fair. There's a lot there, and it took me a couple hours to get a grasp on the basics to get to that point where now in a mission, I'm like thinking ahead of like, do I give a shit about that mech? No, I'm just gonna blow it up, or do I care about this or that?
Do you have something in particular you look for in terms of a good tactics or strategy game that like you feel like nothing's addressed in the field of games so far?
I don't know about nothing addressing it, because I really I feel like I'm guilty of essentially just imprinting on XCOM, and I'm like, the ideal strategy game is XCOM, and Enemy Within, or XCOM 2, both of which, like XCOM 2 War of the Chosen is like. It's a beautiful game.
It's wonderful.
It's so good. And then what happens to me, and one of the sins that BattleTech made, in my personal opinion, and again, your mileage will vary on this. I think I'm definitely in the minority for sure, based on the response that I've seen to it, is you kind of need to be like bought into BattleTech before you play, because otherwise, this is like the easiest way for a game to turn me off. It was like cutscene, main menu, cutscene, character creation cutscene, and I was like, I don't care. Princess Zilia of the Antawar realm, like it's her coronation. I just don't care, and I don't think that it's callous to say something like XCOM Enemy Within is like, there's aliens, Commander. Here's a tutorial. All right, you're good. This was like, it took me forever to actually get into a mission, and then the mission was like really slow at the start.
It honestly caught me off guard too, because my knowledge as far as that universe is concerned is just the Mech Warrior games and the Mech Commander games from the 90s, which is much more action focused because it's a first person simulator thing. Apparently BattleTech's lore is like Game of Thrones level deep. Which is nuts.
I sort of got an inkling of that.
Yeah.
Really intimidating if you're not interested in it.
Yeah. Well, where they put the story takes place before it gets way convoluted. But there's still like warring empires and kingdoms and shit, which if you're into that thing, it's really interesting. If you're not, again, the first hour or two is going to be really slow. But I personally, like, as my personal tastes are concerned, I love being able to manage the minutia of my mech. Everything from what's on its hard points down to the overall tonnage of the armor that I'm putting on it. That kind of stuff is interesting to me because it gives me more of a sense of ownership over my mercenary company, which is what they're trying to sell you, is that you own a mercenary company, and as the owner of this mercenary company, you have to manage all of this stuff. And if you do it well, it's going to feel like you're doing a good job, where if you do it poorly, things will start to fall apart. People will start fighting amongst one another. Morale of the crew is going to drop. I like that a lot, but I can see how that might be way too much for somebody.
And yeah, I want to make it clear, like, I don't think that the developers made a mistake. I think this is like a Kickstarter.
This was a Kickstarter
project.
Yeah.
And it seems like you're being loyal to your base. If you Kickstarted it and the promise was basically like, hey, remember those games that you loved, but now they're unprofitable, so nobody makes them? Like, if you handle some of the upfront risk, we'll make that game for you, but like with the polish of a
more
21st
modern
century game. Yeah, exactly. So like, I'm not really upset that the game missed the mark for me, or at least has appeared to miss the mark for me right now. It seems like they did an authentic job, which the only thing I will say is, like, I was very hopeful as well because I really liked the new Shadowrun games, and I have for the connection, they're made by Harebrained Schemes, which is the same developer that made BattleTech, and I have no vested interest in Shadowrun beyond the fact that, you know, I thought Shadowrun Returns and Shadowrun Hong Kong were super cool. So I kind of thought that maybe BattleTech, I would be like, I've never bought into it before, but this might be like a good buying in point, and it just wasn't for me, at least.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. There was definitely a push for me too in the beginning, just be like, when does it get to the part that I know about, the open map and the contracts and the management? And it takes a while. But even then, when you get to that part, it's very deep and time consuming and slow.
I was trying to figure out where I come at this, where I kind of don't even see myself on the stage of being remotely interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I'm against strategy games, because I enjoy XCOM. I played Den Vidland recently, which I think is kind of strategy management. And They Are Billions, which I think is pretty directly a strategy game.
Yeah.
And I guess what gets me is all of those seem to be about either character-driven moments or specifically about like humanity's surviving against something. And I don't even know what BattleTech is, other than there's robots and you customize them. So like I don't have an in to even imagine why I would be interested in it, let alone want to summon that enthusiasm yet.
Yeah, if the pitch of like, you live in this futuristic world where there's private mercenary companies who have their own battle mechs that get hired to handle tough situations in the galaxy, and your role is to manage that and take contracts and do that. If that doesn't sound interesting, then I don't think BattleTech is going to grab you.
Yeah, it's like several steps away from understanding why I would even begin there.
Yeah. Yep. No, and I get that. I get that completely. But I'm glad you tried it at least, Ryan. And I'm glad you like Frostpunk. Frostpunk, I think I like it a little more than you.
Yeah.
But it's a good game. That brings us to the news segment, which we have a couple of things we apparently would like to talk about here. The first one is pretty easy. From Software is offering a 50% discount on the Dark Souls remake, but delisting it on Steam on May 8th.
So they're only selling it on PC for like 2 weeks or something?
Yeah, so that's what it sounds like. It's going to be on PC for 2 weeks for 50% off, and then I assume the 50% off sale is coming off.
It sounds like they're taking it off of Steam. If I'm reading the headline correct, like it won't be purchasable on Steam after.
Damn.
They're replacing it with the new SKU essentially.
Oh, so the old Dark Souls is being removed.
Is going to be delisted.
Okay, that makes more sense. So yeah, so they're going to get rid of the old Dark Souls and put this one in.
Okay.
That's interesting to me, because my concern would be that the new remake doesn't work as well as the modded old version with the patches that make it run at 60 frames and all this other stuff, and that this version is going to be a step back from that.
That would suck.
That would be kind of terrible. I hope that the remake is going to run as well or better than the new one.
I'm hoping that. Well, first off, if you have it in your library, I'm pretty sure.
I'm assuming you'll still have it. Yeah.
Then the other, I think they don't want to be responsible for people buying the older one, which may even be better. We'll see. And then isn't it still saddled with like Games for Windows Live?
They removed that in the patch.
They removed. Okay, well then disregard.
That's
but I don't know if there will be any way to use multiplayer in it. Regardless.
That's interesting. Because they might be disconnecting it from the servers, maybe.
They may have already. To be honest, I'm not sure.
Huh. Interesting.
It's a bit of an odd one, right? Like I didn't know they were going to be offering the 50% off in the first place, so I'm glad they are.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've griped a couple of times that it's like it feels a little disingenuous in a way, because they released a kind of not totally functional game, and now they're asking for money for a version that works properly. Because there aren't that many meaningful changes to it, to be honest. I mean, there's some quality of life stuff that's pretty nice. They've tightened up a couple shaders, but it's not like a massive overhaul.
Yeah.
It's all the same assets. And I actually saw a graphical comparison where there are textures that are more compressed in the new version than in the old version.
That's weird, man.
The edges of some stairs, they look like 8-bit compared to the new one. Not that that's really big anyway, but I don't really understand why that happened, and maybe it's a console issue, but it just is weird. The whole thing's a little weird.
It's like the least excited I've ever been for a game I will buy 100%.
You're going to buy it? You're going to buy the remastered version?
Absolutely.
You're going to play through it, like on stream and stuff, you think?
Probably not.
No.
But I don't know, maybe you could do some invasion stuff on stream.
Yeah.
Just I don't know. This is a really tough one for me as the pro business guy on the show. As the guy who's always like, you guys don't understand. Hey, why? oh, are we all going socialist now? To like be a caricature of myself.
I can explain it if you want me to.
Well, but like here I have to like face that cynicism head on, because the number one thing that is a selling point for the remaster is that the multiplayer community and like the invasion community is going to be revitalized.
Right.
But it's just like, I think that argument is very, very stupid. Because like, well, okay, then literally you could just be like, take off the game that's already on Steam, release a new version of any game that has multiplayer in it for $20 and be like, well, a lot of people will buy it because it's like an event, so it's worth it. And I'm like, I think that sucks. I think that attitude is terrible. Yeah. Even though I'm probably going to do it.
My understanding is really that it's just not for us at all. It's really just that they wanted to get this released on current gen hardware on consoles, and they happen to also port it to PC. So it's really not a decision-making process that took into account any of the things we were factoring in when we were hoping for stuff. It's just strictly business in this case. And I'm sad about that, but it is what it is.
Let me put it this way. What if Valve was like, here's pretty much exactly how I feel about it. What if Valve took Counter-Strike Global Offensive and was like, we're remaking it and we're delisting the original off of Steam? It's going to be the same game, same maps, same weapons. It's going to look a little bit better, and it's going to be $20. Wouldn't you be like, you're making me buy the same game?
That's what I would be, yeah. That's how I am with this, really.
And the best reasoning for it is, well, there's going to be a lot of people playing it at the start. So like it feels like it's like a games as a service model, but with the game as a product
retroactively.
Yeah, it's like later they're like, oh, we want to do this from now on. Like,
well, it's not something they'll be able to repeat. Obviously, it's a one shot.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the time we just end up like putting our hands up in the air and being like, Japan, like, sure, okay, Dark Souls is going to be on Switch, and this is what the price you have to pay as a PC player is that from going forward, you're probably mostly going to be saddle playing the remaster you didn't necessarily want, or at least you didn't want it to be like just kind of half-assed.
Yeah.
You know what sucks too is I'm so vulnerable to this whole thing because I read in some stupid forum someone that talked to somebody that worked on it that said they made some really great shader improvements in Arcade Garden, and then the switch flips in my head and I'm like, well, I kind of want to know what that looks like. So
maybe someone will mod in like the uncompressed textures later or something like that. Yeah. We'll finally 43 years on, we'll get the definitive version of Dark Souls.
Thank God.
The bed of chaos will be reworked to be an actually good boss, and being in Lost Izalith won't make you want to throw up by hitting that weird part of the visual cortex of your brain that creates nausea.
Yeah. When I was streaming 0 degrees west, 0 degrees north, I was talking about what, like, is there a level editor yet? Because I just want to go through the whole game and fix all the stupid fucking textures that I know how to fix. If I could just get access to their level editing tools, I could fix all my problems, and then I'd be happy, and I could rest and let Dark Souls go.
It'll never happen, man.
Because there's no tools.
It'll never happen. Well, it's interesting. I don't think I'm going to buy it. I don't really care enough, and I've played through Dark Souls a couple times. I'm good. I don't need to play through a remastered version that may be worse than the modded original that I have.
Well, now that you have a PS4, you should play Bloodborne.
I am going to. That's next on my list.
That's a good game.
I want to play. After God of War, it's Bloodborne and Uncharted 4 are the top two that I want to cover. So,
I think I like the combat in Gears or God of War more than I like in Dark Souls. Can you believe that?
I totally do believe that.
No, yeah, I can believe that.
I think it works. Yeah. I think you could... I think you can make that argument.
It's so good.
There's more ways to approach it. Like the combat in Dark Souls is amazing, but if you play it with anything other than a sword and shield, I feel like you're just doing it wrong. Yeah. Like not even inhibiting yourself, but you're just like not playing it in the way that is the most fun, which is a little gatekeepy. But just like
in God of War, something as simple as throwing the axe adds so much to your availability of combos because you now have just your fists that are wildly different than when you swing your axe.
Dude, just throwing the axe at a single enemy's feet over and over and over feels awesome. Like, it feels
Every
great.
time it comes back to your hand, it's weighty and it just feels satisfying.
Yeah, there's a lot of tactile elements, and there's like those sick ass 300 style slowdown moments where you grab your shield and you whack them right in the jaw with it, and time slows down for a second. It just feels so good.
Oh, and yeah, when you parry and knock them back, and they go flying into the wall and just crash into the wall and comes down, it's like, wow, I hit him with the power of a fucking god, because that's
there's
what
actual decals when they hit the wall that it looks like the wall cracked. That's such detail.
That's what it just feels good. I'm surprised we have not seen like a Thor game that has
this is it right here.
This obviously, this is it. But like that's how you do Mjolnir. That's how you do like the hammer coming back in a game. It just, no matter where it is.
What's Mjolnir?
That's his hammer. That's Thor's hammer.
If you say so.
Do you think Thor could kill Kratos?
I think we will probably find out by the end of the game.
We'll know the answer.
I have a feeling that is going to. We'll know the answer to that at the end of the game. Well, I see Chad even knows what Mjolnir is. How do you say it, Ryan? Mjolnir?
Mew?
I'm sorry, what? Mugenics?
Well, yeah, you haven't seen Thor 2 The Dark World recently?
No, God, no, because that movie I saw once and never wanted to see it again.
It's pretty bad.
It's pretty rough. All right, well, we'll move on to the last bit of news, the one that I find pretty interesting. Valve has acquired Campo Santo, the developers of Firewatch. They are currently now working on In the Valley of the Gods, which is a treasure hunt or a search for treasure.
Working on Dota skins?
They are now.
Sorry.
Campo Santo's a 12-person team. They are relocating to Valve's Bellevue, Washington headquarters to continue work on In the Valley of the Gods. And I don't think I've ever heard Valve acquiring of a company before.
They have done it twice in my living memory, to the best of my knowledge.
Who? Because I don't remember.
They bought or acquired the studio that made the Alien Swarm mod for Half-Life, or for something.
God damn it, you have such a good memory.
And then they allowed them to make like their own Alien Swarm free to play on Steam. And then they acquired that one like student team before the release of Portal 2. And then they incorporated their like paint Portal mechanics into Portal 2.
And they bought Ice Frog.
Well, yeah, I think it counts, because I don't know. They hired Ice Frog, I guess, and I don't know. Like, I mean, didn't they hire the original Counter-Strike mod makers? Like, there's kind of, I guess, there's a fuzzy line between like buying a company and just hiring a dev that made a mod. But
yeah, I mean, true, but. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't understand the point or why they did it, and I don't know how much discussion we have here. I mean, I read through the article, and it's just like, well, they bought them.
So cool. I want to just say, like, this is like the dream, I imagine, if you're Campo Santo.
Oh, God, yeah. Being acquired by Valve? God, yes.
They're like, oh, my God. First, we made a game, and it did really well. It sold a lot, critically acclaimed, lots of respect from our peers. And then someone's going to pay us to move out of the Bay Area, and where like a 1-bedroom apartment is $3,500 a month, and move to Seattle, where a 1-bedroom apartment is like $1,900 a month. Still a little crazy, but like, and we get to work for Valve, which is hopefully a little bit more stable or resilient to turbidity, as opposed to just being your own thing.
If they bought them, are they absorbing them, or are they going to run under Campo Santo?
It sounds
Valve?
Like it's Campo Santo under Valve from what I read in the article.
So Valve is technically just publishing them, but they bought the rights to their creative.
Yeah, Valve has acquired Campo Santo, known for their outdoor exploration game Firewatch, in an announcement that came on Saturday. Campo Santo went on to say that the decision came after a series of long conversations about values and how, when you get right down to it, we as human beings are hard limited by time we have left when it comes to continue making things that we care about and believe in. The acquisition is a bit of a surprise for Valve, which in recent years has put much more focus on Steam VR and other hardware stuff. But I assume they're still going to operate under this Campo Santo name, it looks like.
Yeah, and I guess like they're still making In the Valley of the Gods.
Yeah, they're still working
in
the Valley of the Gods.
So it's neat.
You think that maybe they just saw the potential of that game and they're like, we just want this to be our outward-facing, like, artistic reference. We want these people to represent us.
Maybe.
Like, are they shifting into now, are they going to buy a bunch of developers? Or, I mean, there's just a lot of options that now open up because they chose them and why them?
Yeah, I mean, Firewatch was a good game. I liked it a lot. I mean, I had some issues with it, but it was still an enjoyable experience.
Let me
They have
hit you.
credibility for sure.
My pet theory that I don't think is a hot take is that maybe Valve is like, these would be really good guys to make VR stuff for us.
Right? Yeah, I mean,
like, the games translate well to the VR space, and you know, it seems like that. If I was looking at it from the outside, which is exactly what we're doing, that would be what I would think of. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be thinking like, you know, they're gonna make like a story-based Half-Life or like a single-player Dota or something like that. But you know, maybe, I don't know.
Well, as opposed to they just wanted to benefit somehow, or mutually benefit from the creation of this new game, and that they believe in them enough that they're willing to fund them in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll be curious to see what comes of it, if really anything changes on them. But I wouldn't be surprised, like Ryan said, to see them working on VR stuff in the future.
Also feel like I just can't fathom, like, how much money Valve makes that they could. Like, I'm pretty sure to buy Campo Santo was probably like their CS:GO revenue for a month. Like one little sliver of like a fraction of their overall Steam revenue. They're like, we'll just buy Campo Santo.
Well, you won't move them out. We'll move them all out. There's only 12 of them. There's not many. I'll be curious to see if it affects anything. Yeah, I'll be curious to see if it affects anything on Campo Santo's side. It won't obviously change Valve in any way, but
it's a pivot. But like, did you see that in March, Fortnite made $229 million?
Holy hell!
That's
crazy.
Absolutely crazy.
Fortnite was smart, man. They were very, very, very smart in what they did. They're very recognizable.
29
I know.
million. We used to talk about PUBG. We'd be like, oh my God, PUBG has sold, you know, like 3 million units this month.
Yeah.
That's like $90 million. Steam takes 30%.
Yeah.
And then they, you know, Fortnite made $229 million in a month.
It's insane. That's what happens when you have it on every platform, including tablets, and it's like the big school game right now.
Yeah.
They were smart.
That's exclusively off of V-Bucks, right?
Yes,
That's
everything, because the game is free.
You can buy.
You can buy battle passes. But
okay.
But the battle pass is actually like I don't think you can find much to hate on Epic for the monetization of Fortnite. It's just like it's so big that it's just gonna make money hand over fist.
Yep.
Skins are expensive. They are really expensive. But if you buy the battle pass, which is like $10 a season, you unlock like 6 skins and a bunch of emotes and a bunch of gliders and blah blah. And they recently, in the most recent patch, they added like a lifetime refund. So if you have skins that you don't want, you can refund up to 3 of them over the course of the lifetime of your account. So even then, if you're like, well, maybe like some 12-year-olds bought $20 skins they don't want, well, they can refund $60 worth of them. They get V-Bucks. They don't get real money. They get V-Bucks back. And it's pretty like lenient as far as games like that go.
I can't come down on their monetization really, because it's similar to Dota 2, and I will always say Dota 2 has the best free-to-play model ever.
Yeah,
because the game is free. You know, you don't have to buy anything. You just play it, and you can earn skins and stuff just by playing. You don't have to pay for them.
I found they had a leprechaun skin, and I wanted to buy it, and I didn't realize that you could only buy some skins at some times.
Yeah, it's like that Overwatch model of like these skins are limited time because they're holidays, so they kind of incentivize you to spend your money.
Yeah. And then I looked at the store for the first time. There was like one thing for sale. I'm like, how are they making so much money?
It's like Woot for skins. It's like they have skins are there for 24 hours and then they're gone and they might never come back.
Yep.
So people just buy all of them probably.
Oh, I'm sure
some people maybe, but I don't know. I find it. Ever since the Battlefront 2 stuff, I'm much more on the side of like, you know, these companies are shitty.
Yeah.
But the fact that Fortnite is like, it's $20, and it's like on a literal level, it is not at all worth it to just be like, $20. I got like a tomato head. But at least it's not like loot boxes that obfuscate the chances to get something that you really want.
You can just buy the skin.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you want the skin, buy it. If you don't, Like the battle pass is an insanely good deal for people that want something in the middle of like, I don't want to spend $100 on this game, but you know, if I spend $10 every 2 months, I'm going to unlock a lot of stuff. The other, like, just to, again, be like extremely pro Epic, because I think they've done a really good job.
No, yeah, I'm impressed with what they've done.
You can buy, I believe you can buy the battle pass with V-Bucks, but even if you can't, it's like 1,000 V-Bucks or $10. And then as you do the challenges that come with the battle pass, you get 1,000 back. So it almost pays for itself over the course of the lifetime.
Roll it over every month.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you can. Yeah, you can basically like, if you play a ton, it pays for itself.
Huh.
It doesn't because you don't get $10. But
no, I know, but like you could buy another battle pass, which could in turn buy another battle pass if you were good enough to do it.
Exactly, you could go infinite, I guess, basically.
It's really nice.
Cool, I guess, yeah. I can't really be mad at that. I mean, I'm sick of skins and things costing money, but yeah, I can't be mad at that really.
I think it's one of those things where it's like when you got everybody on Earth playing your game, you don't have to be a dick to make like,
but
a lot of money.
They usually are for some reason.
I mean, look at Bluehole. Bluehole, not to like rail on them more, but they were the #1 game, and Fortnite came around, and Fortnite was like, man, we love your, PUBG, you inspired us, blah, blah, blah. And Bluehole was like, we're going to sue you.
Dude, it blows my mind. Again, I have such great memories
of course.
Of PUBG. But then, like, comparing the monetization system between PUBG and Fortnite, you're like, PUBG, you bought crates.
After buying the game.
Well, and yeah, you paid for crates and you maybe paid for keys as well. All of the crates were fucking garbage.
Well,
red shoes, black shirt, And then what you buy them, and this is where like the cynicism came from. You don't buy them because you like what's in them. You buy them because of the secondary market where some moron out there is willing to pay $350 for a school skirt or something like that. Whereas in Fortnite, you really just have to be like, I want to have a fishbowl as a helmet. And then you're like, okay, $15. It's not like I'm going to buy 10 crates and in all likelihood, all 10 are just going to be shit. They're just going to be like khakis. Who cares?
The art and like style of PUBG is bland and boring as shit. So I never really understood the excitement of opening a crate for what could be a darker brown shirt.
Yes. I can tell you why. We've established value for 2 of the items in all the crates, and that's mouth shirt and red shirt. Those have intrinsic value only to this group of people. And they managed to hit that perfectly.
But that's why I love Fortnite so much. Like, the skins are ridiculous, but the game is bright and recognizable and colorful and enjoyable to look at, where PUBG is hideous asset flips that have a brown filter over it all. And none of the skins are exciting to look at. You don't look cool.
3 pairs of fucking pants. All 3. Gray, beige, and white pants. That was my whole loot experience.
The PUBG loot crates really are like a lottery, more or less. Like it's really just even more so than CS:GO crates, where I think they're close to a lottery, but at least you're like, and there are gun skins in PUBG now, but like it took a long time to get there. But,
can you get weed leaves all over your SMGs?
I don't believe so. You could probably get something that looks somewhat similar, but
gold bars.
And I hate the argument that's like,
well, they don't want to give you a unicorn head in PUBG because it's like a simulation.
Okay, well, maybe like don't sell crates that are full of shit. Like, just don't sell the crates then. You're already paying $30 up front. Man. Why do you need to have like the best of both worlds?
Because they want to dominate.
Well, I mean, I guess the cynical answer is obvious, I guess, is that they can, or they could for a long time, but and I still, the fact that PUBG like only recently took out the cosmetic loot that you could find in the game. I've been asking for that for like 8 months.
That was still in the game. I forgot about that.
I'm not trying to suggest that I am like the arbiter of game design, but I'm like, who cares that you land in a room and there's like 10 shirts on the ground? Does it affect the gameplay if instead of there being 10 shirts, there's just nothing? I think
I'd rather nothing, really.
Yeah, I would much rather nothing for many reasons.
Yeah, but then what's the point of having to buy crates if I can just pick up what I want to wear at every run? That's my cynical being. That's me. That's
You
me
don't look
saying
different.
that's
The
what
only
I'm saying. That's me. My inner monologue is the developer's like, well, we can incentivize them buying more crates for skins if we remove the ability to customize your look when you play. Maybe I'm a little bit too negative, but either way. Well, that's Valve buys Campo Santo. And that's it. I think we're good. I think that covers everything that we wanted to talk about today. Did we miss anybody want to cover anything that they've been playing?
God of War is really good.
Yeah, I really want to go play.
I forgot to mention that before in case
I really want to go back and play God of War right now, but I got other work I got to do after this, so I can't. So I'm a little sad about it. Hopefully I'll have beaten it by next week, though. But thank you guys so much for watching this week's episode of Roundtable Live. If you are a subscriber and you missed it, it'll be available immediately as a VOD here on the channel. If you want to watch it for free, it'll be live tomorrow over at BaerTaffy's channel and on SoundCloud and all those other wonderful podcast apps. We will be back next Friday. But before we go, big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Starting with Julian Avelsgard, Scotty119, Ricky Gris, Brizzle Bip, Golden Kumui, Mediocrities, Justin, Jin, When the Rain Starts to Pour, Falco, Simmerfet, Cowboy Chemist, Eric Schooley, Stephen Aoki, James Peed, Ellis Spice, John Kalchik, Otamaz Games BR, Jakar Sampson with the Dance Number, Cole Noir, Talks to Wall, Colby Klein, Greenlight, and Oren Saltzman, and of course all the subscribers that we got while we were streaming. Quick Ken, Hollow NPC, G Biermensky, K Techstream, Chase 1971, Pulse Lane, as well as Devastating Wake, Wing Wang Has, Bearded Tomato, Hosted Radio, and that's it. All right, cool. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next Friday. Bye.
Bye.
Later.